And so, it begins. Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shivering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strode across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one Murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Please. It begins now. Yes, indeed, folks. Welcome to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Zola Biscuit. Welcome to the show. It's the Tuesday Assault, as we're calling it. It's not going to happen all that often, I don't believe, but we're happening today. Why are we happening today, of all days? Well, the simple answer to that would be it didn't air Friday. Why did it not air Friday? Well, the reason for that was indeed quite a selfish one. I spent all weekend playing board games, card games, and Street Fighter 4 on a 150-inch 720p projector with 8 WoW Radio staff and listeners, and it was awesome. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming up for that, because it was absolutely fantastic. Oh yeah, so that was the reason I didn't do the show, and quite frankly, I think that's a damn good reason. If you disagree, well, that really is not my problem, because it was awesome, and let's face it, in comparison, you're not. You know, it's not an unfair comment to make. You simply are not 150-inch 720p Street Fighter 4. No, you can't claim to be. So you're just going to have to deal with that. What do we got coming up in the show for you today? Well, we have many great things. Lots of information came out in the last couple of days regarding Ulduar, and indeed, I was actually going to talk about Ulduar on the Friday show, because they released their preview page, and that's actually what I'm going to talk about relatively soon. And there's a phone going off. I never had a phone in this room until a couple of days ago, and now look what happened. Oh well. Also, the Argent tournament with mounted combat, and we shall be asking, is Lance good for horsing? Good question. Also, taking WoW outside of WoW in the form of WoW board gaming. Kiddie ye not. WoW board gaming. We actually had a chance to play the Warcraft adventure game by Fantasy Flight, I believe is the name of the company, and we can talk a little bit about that, plus the resurrection of Fat Loot's Rise of the Scrubs. Yes, indeed, I've resurrected my board game idea, written about 20 pages of rules, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the show. And of course, last but not least, your chance to change the outcome of this show. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure. It's the illusion of choice! And in the illusion of choice, you get to email your topic, so you can start right now. You get to choose the last topic of the show, assuming your topic does not suck. Email themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. Yes, indeed. Now, before we get into the mailbag this week, I'd like to talk about a couple of things. First thing being, you may have noticed, if you've gone to wcradio.com, that we have a brand new website. Yes. We got sick of being hacked, what could I say, and our previous website, well, let's face it, actually sucked. Certainly from a coding perspective. The guy who coded it was not very good at what he did, let me put it that way. Thankfully, we have a better coder now in the form of Cadwallian, who has put together this wonderful new site. Bits of it are missing, but it's functional. The archives will get updated quite soon. The RSS feeds will start working again and all that good stuff. So yes, stay tuned, stick with us guys. I will guarantee that this website will be way better. There's a lot of very exciting new features coming, and we're looking forward to showing them to you as they deploy over the next couple of weeks. And I get a chance to have another blog, because the staff told me to get rid of my previous one because it was too mean. So I'm going to have to tone it down a bit, which kind of sucks. I'm thinking of replacing every swear word and insult with the word kittens, and then perhaps it will live up to their standards of nicety, whatever that may mean. I'm not familiar with the term, what can I say? Now, other things to cover, other things that need to be discussed. You'll remember a few months ago that we announced that we were going to be doing a charity event to raise money for a charity that supports research into, I believe the term is epidermolysis bullosa, which is an unfortunate genetic condition that one of our listeners actually has. Now, we said this was going to be at the end of February, but we decided to make it a little bit bigger. It was going to be big enough already. We said, hey, we're going to do a 24-hour broadcast. I'm going to attempt to stay on the air for 24 hours and probably die in the process in support of this particular charity. However, we're going to go one better, and this is why it hasn't aired yet, because we've been organising this, and it's currently in the stages of application. Not only are we going to do a 24-hour broadcast in support of this particular charity, but we're going to attempt to set the world record for the longest live online gaming show. Yes, indeed, the Guinness Book of World Records recently released a book called the Guinness Book of World Records Gamers Edition, and they are taking applications for gaming-related world records, and the book is actually really good, and you should check it out if you get the chance. I believe Game Station in the UK has it for £10, which is well worth it. If you can get a hold of it, it's a really good read. It's the first book I've ever read which actually genuinely markets itself towards gamers, and it's clearly written by people who have done their research, because it is credible, it is factual, it is entertaining, it is informative. It's just great. It's a great book. So we're going to try and get in the next one with the longest online gaming broadcast ever. We're going to try and set the record for that. So we're currently applying for it, filling in the applications for it, and we'll let you know how that goes. And hopefully we'll get the permission to do it, and we will attempt to set that world record while raising money for the charity, which is called Deborah. It supports the epidermolysis bullosa research. Oh yeah. Should be fun. Also, one final reminder to those who've been following the progress of Arcanist Belt. We've been on raid hiatus for a couple of weeks, gearing up and making sure we've got 40 people ready to do Molten Core, Black Relay, and all that other exciting stuff. There will be a raid on Thursday. Turn up for it. There will be a raid on Saturday. Turn up for it. There will be a raid on Sunday. Turn up for it. Yes, indeed. I intend to make progress this week, come hell or high water. So go to the website, arcanistbelt.com. We might be opening up some recruitment again if you wanted to get into the guild, but you didn't have the opportunity to do so. So check out arcanistbelt.com over the next couple of days to get your place in our level 60 Old World Content Guild. Oh, yes. Right. I think we've probably covered all of that. Yes, is that all of the news? I feel like, I don't know if you've ever been to an English church, but in a lot of Church of England churches, towards the end they have the messages, which usually involve some like 70 or 80-year-old woman from the congregation comes along and tells you what's going on in the parish. It's like, we're going to be having a coffee morning this week. Yeah, that's more like the witches' coffee mornings. Like, my pretties, we're going to be having a coffee morning this week. Bring your children. Yes. That's actually quite disturbing. Anyway, that's what I feel like right now. Message is done. Time is slipping away through our fingers. So it's time for this.
That sounds like it's mail time. Here's the mail.
Oh, it never fails.
It makes me want to wag
my tail.
When it comes,
I want to wail.
I must say that drop-in is actually incorrect, because in my case, the mail frequently fails. Indeed, today it quite literally did, as Gmail went down, and the end of the internet was proclaimed by millions of screaming geeks the world over. It was horrendous. But it went back up again, so all is fine. But yes, my mail frequently fails. As in, this one. It's pretty rare that I actually get an email which I consider to be incredibly mind-bogglingly stupid. But in this case, I'll make an exception. It's from Trustine of Bladefist US, and he says this. In response to my recent allegations that Wrath is too easy, hey, I want to say that if you want someone who could not disagree with you more, you've found him. I don't believe someone saying that raid content is easy unless they are saying it from the saddle of a black proto-Drake. That's from Trustine Blade Fist US. That's like the guy who says, well, I don't believe your opinion about this movie until you make one of your own. Your opinion about this book is invalid because you are not an author. And in this case, it's like, no, I'm afraid not. Your opinion of the 98% of Wrath content is incorrect because you don't happen to have done Sartharian 3 Drakes, which is an optional part of one particular tiny 10-minute encounter. Right, okay, great rationale there. Yes, okay, we get the idea. One encounter is relatively challenging, but is it harder than Cthulhu? Is it harder than Old Kel'Thuzad? Is it harder than pre-nerf Kil'jaeden? Is it harder than Illidan? Is it harder than even Archimonde? Is it harder than the original Vash? Is it harder than the original Kael'thas? The answer, from what I've been told, bearing in mind I am in a guild that has done Sartharan 3 Drakes, the answer from what I've been told by them, and indeed I look forward to experiencing it when we go in there again this week, is no, it isn't. It's not even close. I don't have to have done Sartharian 3 Drakes to know that one encounter out of how many? Think about it. Huge numbers of encounters. I wouldn't say huge, but I suppose if you count the 10-man. What do you got? You've got 30 bosses. If you combine Nax 10 and Nax 25, we'll ignore the fact that they're the same bloody bosses. You've got, of course, VOA, 10 and 25-man version, Malagos 10 and 25-man version. Then you've got Sartharian with no Drakes, Sartharian with 1 Drake, Sartharian with 2 Drakes. You got like 40 encounters total, or 45 if you count that. And one of them is vaguely challenging. Woo! Golf clap! Fantastic! Yes. Seriously. It's one encounter, which is vaguely hard the first time you do it. And any normal raiding guild, anyone that's done any of the end game bosses and the end of dungeon stuff before they nerfed it into the floor for kindergartners knows that they can do that encounter because it is not as hard as the bosses that I have just listed. This is an objective fact. This is something you can look at the mechanics, you can watch the videos, you can ask anyone that's done it. Is it harder than these encounters? And the answer is no. It's like I could say, well, you don't know anything about raiding because you didn't wipe for 2 months on Cthulhu when Cthulhu was hard. And yes, Cthulhu was hard. Still is. And good lord. I don't know why people keep their brains sometimes, I must say. Anyway. Let's pick up another piece of what you might call email in this crazy world. This is from Sukari, level 80 human rogue from Kil'jaeden US. He says this: a question for Blue Police. What impact, if any, do you think the advent of dual specking will have on pure DPS classes such as mages, hunters and rogues, who are unable to bring more utility to a raid with the system? How do you think this can be balanced if it will affect these classes? Right. Well, I don't think the dual specking is going to bring utility regardless. We're not looking at a situation, for what I've seen, normal raiding guilds do not, generally speaking, have shortages. Yeah? You don't need people to go off and respec. That's a properly organised guild for you. You don't need to go off and get people, alright, oh god, we're short on tanks today, go and respec, or whatever. That, generally speaking, doesn't happen. I have not seen that happen since Wrath launch. Not at all. So saying, oh, well, you can have dual spec, that's not going to bring extra utility. I mean, they could go back and do it anyway. If they really needed to, you could just portal them to a major city. Dual spec doesn't bring any utility to a raid group at all. It just brings mild convenience. Indeed, I believe actually that it does help out DPS classes more so than hybrid classes. And you're going to be saying, well, Total Biscuit, what the hell are you talking about? How could that possibly be the case? Well, follow my rationale here. People are saying, well, it doesn't really help out pure DPS classes. I would argue otherwise. Specifically from the perspective of a mage. Think about it this way. There are 2 viable raiding specs for the mage. One is Frostfire, and the other is Arcane. Now, Arcane suffers from a mana problem, but it has potentially extremely high DPS if you are able to sustain it. Now, there are certain encounters that favour Arcane more, and there are certain encounters that favour Frostfire more. Which ones favour Frostfire? Well, think about it. Think about Loatheb, for instance. Loatheb, a fight which allows you to crit out of the wazoo. Yeah? Really, really favours the Frostfire bolt spec. Why does it favour the Frost Firebolt spec? Well, because you've got all those extra crit damage talents, and you've got Ignite. Really does favour the Frost Firebolt spec. It's going to favour the Frost Firebolt spec even more come 3.1, because from what I've been told, at least this is from what I can see, there may be, maybe, the possibility that Living Bomb is going to crit. Yes, indeed. Living Bomb is going to be able to crit. So, Lower Theb favours it. However, there are some fights that are shorter than others, and indeed you can go all out on those fights with Arcane. Now, the situation being that you can't do that right now. People are not going to let you go, oh, I'm just going to go back to the town, guys, because I want to respec Arcane and set it up so that I can do a bit more extra DPS in that fight. People aren't going to do that. No, but if there was a Lexicon of Power, for instance, which of course people are going to be able to bring to the raid, yes, then people can change their spec. If a fight benefits a particular damage spec over another, it favours it, or perhaps it's short enough that you could just nuke Arcane Blast for the entire fight, then you can spec Arcane. If not, spec Frostfire. It's wonderful. Or maybe you could do it another way. Maybe the raid really, really needs that extra mana regen. Okay, have Frost as one, and have Arcane or Frost Firebolt as the other. It actually really helps. Think about it. I don't know how it applies to other classes, because I don't play them, but I would imagine there are certain fights that favour one DPS spec over another. Now, whereas you are able to simply go back to town, it's like, oh, we need an extra tank, okay, go back to town and respec, which doesn't add anything to the raid. That's something you could already do. What you couldn't do was hop in and out to go to respec every time you wanted to change for a particular encounter that benefited from a specific spec. So yes, it is a boon to pure DPS classes, and I think people need to get it into their head that, yeah, just because it's not as dramatic, you can't go, oh, now I'm a tank, oh, I'm a DPS. Doesn't mean you should discount it as a useful tool. Because it is. Genuinely is. My name is Total Biscuit, and you're listening to Blue Please Tuesday Assault here on WoW Radio. This is Jurasass with Rasputin. I'll be right back after this. Enjoy.